Something that's trending right now, NAD plus, IVs, drips, supplements. What is the story with NAD plus? Is there evidence behind it? What's the deal? You see a lot of celebrities on NAD plus right now. What's the deal?
So NAD plus is basically nicotine adenine dinucleotide, which is basically in all of our cells in our body. And its primary function is it plays a role in energy metabolism in our cells. But however, in the last decade or so, or even more, we've realized that there may be some therapeutic benefits to administering these medications exogenously, either through an IV or pill form or patch or gel form in some cases. And the main premise of it is to help patients improve their energy metabolism, help with their cell function, cell metabolism, and ultimately help with anti-aging in some way. Anti-aging predominantly. And there is a decent amount of research showing that these supplements could be beneficial to patients, whether it's improving your mental health, actually, potentially your energy, and potentially your overall energy.
So paint me a picture of a patient who is struggling with what sort of symptoms that should then think, oh, maybe I should ask my primary care doctor about NAD+. Like, what does that person look like that could potentially benefit from this medication?
It's a great question. I think a big one is someone who is displaying signs of low energy, fatigue, brain fog, decreased mental clarity, signs of neuroinflammation. So neuroinflammation is kind of a broader kind of term for kind of a process that causes brain fog in patients and could lead to ultimate dementia or Alzheimer's. There's a lot of research going into that at the moment, and NAD and its precursors have shown in research that they could kind of allay these neuroinflammatory processes, and using them regularly could potentially improve these symptoms.
It looks like there's a lot of ongoing research about this.
Yes. Yeah.
So when you let's say I go to you and I say, hey, doc, I'm having all these symptoms. I want to look into NAD+. So what does that look like? Is it one IV over 30 minutes? Am I taking a pill every day? What does the treatment regimen look like for initiating an NAD+?
It's a great question. I think, honestly, there isn't a current evidence showing that the IV version is better than any other version, although patients prefer the IV version for some reason because they think they're getting a more potent version of the medication that goes directly into your body. And there may be some truth to that because studies show that there's higher plasma levels of the NAD, higher urine levels of the NAD, and therefore they're getting more of that treatment. But there is still robust evidence that the oral version of the precursor of the NAD, whether it's NMN, or it's NR, can also be very useful for patients. And there's certain supplements out there like Tru Niagen. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
I have not.
Which I take daily, actually. And I've noticed tremendous benefit from it, actually. And I'm not promoting them or anything, but they're actually a great product. Like if you're having brain fog, you're feeling tired or fatigued, or even ADHD symptoms, honestly, the medication really helps.
Wow.
It really helps. And I think I'm not a big supplement guy. I mean, I am in some ways, but I also don't think you should take supplements unless you know what you're doing, what it's for. But this one, I think, serves benefits without much risk.
Okay. So here we have a highly trained, experienced, concierge-level internal medicine doctor in Beverly Hills. What supplements do you take on a daily basis?
That's a good question. I think I have my rotations. I think recently I've been pretty consistent with the NAD supplements that we spoke about. I like to take the oral form, which are basically the precursors of NAD.
Yeah.
They're NMN and NR. And I also take a high-grade multivitamin, which has a proprietary blend in it, which has a lot of different ingredients that I like, made by Mitocore. It's like a medical-grade supplement. I am starting to test creatine and HMB. I think those two have shown promise in, maintaining muscle mass, lean mass, and strength. But those are generally what I take. I like to keep it simple. I don't like to take too many things at once. I think I really like to focus on what actually works.
Yeah.
A lot of people are taking things that are either not good quality supplements or they're actually just not what they should be taking, because it's branded well.
Of course.
Or it sounds good. You know, you got to be careful where you're getting your supplements from.
Now, to the people that say, do I need to take a multivitamin if I have a well-balanced diet? What do you say to these people?
That's a great question. Well, some people think they have a well-balanced diet and they don't. That's the hardest point. That's the hardest thing. So I used to be honest with you, I changed my opinion on this in the last few years. I used to be in this school of thought that multivitamins, you don't need to take them every day and they're a waste. And they're just going to be, you go through your urine and you don't need it, you'll get it from your food. But unfortunately, with the current American diet that we have, a lot of people are not getting the nutrients that they need to function at their optimal level.
Interesting.
So I highly recommend that if you're getting a high quality multivitamin, it's actually more beneficial than detrimental for you.
What does a high quality diet look like?
High quality diet?
Yeah, I think, in which you would have no need for a multivitamin.
That's a good question. The thing is, there's a lot, and we're going to get to this. I kind of like you brought that because there's a lot of fad diets and restrictive diets, which I don't espouse to in the long run. I think a good quality diet is one that takes into account all the essential nutrients you need as a human, whether that's the protein that you need, the healthy fats that you need, the vitamins and minerals. If you're getting that in your diet and you're cognizant that you're getting it consistently, you could be probably okay with not taking multivitamins. However, that's not taking into account the genetic and personal factors that patients have in their own body that they may not be absorbing it well enough.
Oh, fascinating. So just because you're eating the appropriate diet, the absorption might be an issue.
Might be an issue, and that's why you come to me and I test your micronutrients, your total body minerals and vitamins, and you may still be deficient even though you're getting it from your diet.
Fascinating.
And you might be a good candidate for taking supplements without even knowing.
Interesting. So if someone is complaining about fatigue, brain fog, some sort of issue, it's not enough that they have a well-balanced, like Mediterranean diet, for instance, like limiting the amount of refined carbohydrates, drinking enough water, so on and so forth. Perhaps there might be some sort of absorption issue that's not being picked up. And you test for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's so common. It's very common.
Let me throw this in there because I got a bunch of questions about this. Seed oils.
Yeah.
So seed oils have been vilified in the media and social media these days. What do you say about seed oils? Are they actually bad for you? Do you have a strong opinion about seed oils?
I don't have a strong opinion, but my opinion is that it's just another trend. In my opinion, I think it's just another kind of money-making scheme.
All right, so I'm going to tell my wife that, who just went and threw all my grapeseed oil out that I paid $24 a bottle for. Damn it, Danny.
I don't necessarily think it's the seed oil. It could be bad quality oil that you're getting from a poor quality supplier.
Is there anything inherently problematic and unhealthy and pro-inflammatory about seed oils?
I think with the current research that we have, there's not enough evidence to prove that.
There's not enough evidence. So why is that a trend right now? Why are people attacking seed oils?
It's a good question. I think there are a little...
And I didn't give Dr. Ben-Huri the...
That's okay.
I didn't tell him we were going to talk about seed oils, so I'm catching him a little off guard.
No, it's fine. Yeah. I think the main problem here is there may be some evidence that shows seed oils, if they're poor quality, or it could be inflammatory for patients. Yeah. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's something that you should avoid completely. Like I would say saturated fats are worse than seed oils.
What are saturated fats? What are unsaturated fats? Yeah. Can you educate everybody?
Saturated fats, in simple terms, are fats that are solid at room temperature versus unsaturated fats that are liquid at room temperature.
So what's better? So butter is then a saturated fat because it's solid at room temperature.
That's correct.
So are all saturated fats bad for you?
Some saturated fat is good for you. Too much saturated fat is bad for you. You want some. You don't want a lot. A lot is proven to increase your cholesterol, increase your cardiovascular risk. But there is some evidence that it's good for your brain function. But I would say some is good. Too much is bad. However, unsaturated fat that's not necessarily the case. You can have more unsaturated fat and it's safer.
Got it.
So if you want to be on the safe side, you can have more unsaturated fat than saturated fat, even though both of them are somewhat essential in your body.
Got it.
Yeah.
Now, on the topic of diet, there are a lot of fad diets. Keto, carnivore diet. I mean, can we address those two if you feel like there's evidence behind them and whether or not you recommend to patients? And I get it, it's individualized per patient. Yeah. But do you have any comment on first keto? And I suppose related to keto is the carnivore diet, being that a ketogenic diet means you're severely restricting the amount of carbohydrates. I think it's less than 25 grams a day.
That's right, yeah.
But why don't you comment on keto and then perhaps also carnivore diet and what you think about them?
So in general, I like to say that I don't espouse to any fad diets or any restrictive diets. I actually think they're not sustainable. I think they're not great for human beings altogether because, like we said earlier, they could lead to nutritional deficiencies, energy deficiencies, and all kinds of issues. However, nutrition and diet are very personalized. You can't use a one-size-fits-all for everybody. So in some cases, certain restrictive diets may work for certain people, and you have to tailor it for those people. So for example, you discuss keto diets. Keto diets are pretty heavy in fat predominantly, and some protein and minimal carbohydrates. These could be beneficial for people who don't respond well to high-carb diets, or they tend to gain weight on high-carb diets, and they have a lot of inflammation on high-carb diets. So these keto diets are basically addressing the problem of inflammation because high fat promotes anti-inflammation in the body.
Really?
And so that's why people prefer the keto in some cases. And if you do keto for long enough, it can also trigger some survival responses in the body that can help patients feel a little bit more energetic, focused. Their brains could be more active in different ways because they're relying on ketones more than sugars, which some people say is a little bit more activating for the brain.
Yeah, so what does that mean? So in a ketogenic diet, you're not consuming carbohydrates.
That's right.
But your body needs sugar to operate.
That's right.
Which means that the sugar that's being supplied to your bloodstream is not coming from an exogenous source like your food.
That's right.
It's coming from where? The fat that you're burning in your body.
That's
so
good.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but a ketogenic diet also seems to be a fat burning diet. Is that accurate? Because where is the sugar coming from if you're not consuming it? Because one thing we do know is your body needs glucose, aka sugar,
That's
to
right.
operate. Your brain, your tissues, your muscles, everything.
That's
so
correct.
where's the sugar coming from if you're not consuming it?
So generally speaking, you need to be in a ketotic state or state of ketosis for at least 24 hours, if not more. And before that point, your body taps into its energy reserves. So let's say you're not eating any sugar, you're not eating any carbs. Your body's like, oh, shit, oh, crap, we don't have any energy.
Yeah.
So it taps into its reserves, which are in the liver. And that's called glycogen, which is basically stored carbs, stored sugar. And so you start tapping into that, and then you're going to have your glycogen storage come out and serve as an energy source. And then ultimately your glycogen storage, if you keep not eating carbs, will run out. And the moment that happens, you have certain mechanisms in place that trigger you tapping into your fat stores now. And now your fat stores, which is called lipolysis, now break down your fats, and your fat serves as energy ultimately, which lead to glucose for the body.
So fat can get broken down into sugar?
Somewhat, through metabolic processes, yes. But sugar then you could still get glucose, but you can still, there's other energy sources that you can get from the fat breakdown, including ketones. And that's why it's called keto diet, because you're getting ketones in your body.
Yeah.
And some organs in the body actually do pretty well with ketones as energy, and one of them is your brain and your nervous system. But other sources are not great. Like your muscle, skeletal muscle, actually are pretty good with sugar and glucose. So you might actually not benefit too much from a keto-based diet if you really want your muscles to have energy.
So what is the ideal person that should consider a ketogenic diet? Who is that ideal person?
I would say someone who has like gluten intolerance, someone who...
Gluten intolerance?
Yeah, there's a lot of people who do have gluten intolerance. It has to be proven though. A lot of people think they're gluten intolerant and they're not.
So gluten intolerant.
Gluten intolerant patients.
On the extreme end would be celiac patient, okay?
Exactly.
Gluten intolerant.
Yeah, gluten
Who
intolerant
else?
patients. Patients who predominantly, you can have... it's hard to say. I would never recommend a keto diet. That's the thing.
Interesting.
I would never recommend it. I think I would tailor it for a patient to think maybe they should cut their carbs.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of these diets like keto and carnivore, you can't sustain them for a long time. So I would never recommend them, maybe for a short time, I would say.
On a little bit more extreme than that, and I know we haven't talked about the carnivore diet, we're going to get there.
Yeah.
What's your opinion about fasting, whether that's intermittent fasting,
That's
extended 24, 48, 72-hour fast?
That's a good one.
Do you have much expertise as far as fasting?
I think fasting has become pretty controversial, and they keep going kind of like back and forth about how beneficial it is. But I still think the consensus is that fasting has a lot of benefits.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well.
A lot of benefits, but there is some detrimental effects potentially. But I think all in all, it is more beneficial than negative. And the reason for that is the fasting. When you fast, your body is put in a state of starvation to some extent. And as human beings, our bodies are survival beings.
Yeah.
So we try to survive regardless of what state we're in. And so when you starve your body goes into survival mode, which may release chemicals that help with anti-aging. So that's, and also there's a lot of research that shows calorie restriction and fasting extends life.
Fascinating.
Yeah, and promotes anti-aging.
So perhaps fasting would be a way to promote anti-aging and extend your life.
That's right.
Now, a lot of what we talk about on this podcast is not just psychology, but evolutionary psychology.
Yeah.
So if you think back to, when we're living in tribes in the savannas, hunter-gatherers, our bodies were geared for feast and famine. We would go extended periods of time without eating, and then when we found some sort of like food source, an animal, whatever, we would then feast.
Yeah.
And as we know, evolution takes a very long time, and human development and civilization and agriculture and all these things have progressed rapidly.
Yeah.
Do you think our bodies have some sort of evolutionary basis and are more so wired to have feast and famine?
It's a great question.
Versus this current, it's 2025, we're eating nonstop, there's food constantly available. Is a fasting and then feasting diet more in line with our genetics and the way our body is built? Do you have any sort of comment on that?
I think the answer is yes and no. I think the short answer is yes. The reason for that is, if you look at people who fast and then they feast, we see plenty of improved markers, reduced inflammation. In males, we have higher testosterone. We have tapping into chemicals that release anti-aging to allow us to survive. So I think that's great. However, there are some people that it's probably not a good idea to do the fasting, and you have to be very careful of who you're advising to do that. Some people don't do well with that kind of diet. Obviously, if you're diabetic or you have all these kinds of issues or you're on certain medications, I don't recommend it. But for the average person with no medical issues and they want to potentially improve their health, potentially extend their life, and maintain healthy weight and hormone balance, I think using some form of fasting in their life could definitely be beneficial.
Yeah.
And it may take a while to get there. I think with a lot of difficult things, it takes time. So I think fasting doesn't happen overnight. You should do it for a decent amount of time to start realizing the benefits. So think about it this way. Let's say you're starving, right?
Yes.
You're going to ask yourself, why would your testosterone go up if you're starving, right? And the reason for that is because testosterone is kind of like a hormone that promotes hunting. It promotes aggression, right? So if you're starving, your body's going to tap into your human, evolutionary aggressive side to go get food.
Yes.
So all of a sudden, your hormonal balance is going to shift towards that, and so your testosterone might go higher.
Fascinating.
And that could be beneficial to a lot of guys who suffer from lower testosterone and not have enough energy.
Fascinating. I'm glad you brought that up. Let me kind of digress for a moment. Well, not for a moment. Maybe we'll stay on this.
Yeah.
There's a lot of young men watching this show right now. A lot of them have been fixated and very focused on testosterone levels. Now, could you comment on what are normal healthy ranges of testosterone levels? If I get like a number in the 200s, is that problematic? Do testosterone levels fluctuate? How many times do I have to get a level to be diagnosed as having low testosterone? Can you talk on testosterone levels? The audience is very interested.
Absolutely.